Why did you feel like Anna and Jono's story was an important one to tell at this particular point in time?
I think that the stories that interest me the most are the stories that are about people who are living in between worlds. And when I found out about the teenagers who are in detention who come out to mainstream high school during the day, that really interested me. And then when I started researching more and more, I realised how hard it was to find out those stories. There's a law called the Border Force Act, which prevents people who work with people in detention from talking about what it's like inside. And that was the point where I realised I think this is actually a really important story to tell now, because if it's so hard for me to find out this information about what it's like for somebody living in detention, then how hard is it for just the average person? You know, the average person would know nothing, absolutely nothing about what it's like inside. So there's so many crises going on, and there's international crises about refugees and asylum seekers at the moment. But that was the real thing that brought it home to me, was just the lack of information.
Why did you choose a first-person narrative for the story, and how did you decide on the characters' perspectives?
Yeah, I thought a lot about whether to write in first person or third person, and what made me choose first person in the end was because I really wanted people to be able to walk in the shoes of the characters. So I really wanted them to experience what life was like for Anna living inside detention, for Jono, for Kenny, to be able to shift perspective like that and really be inside the characters' minds. I decided to talk about those three main characters because I was interested in multiculturalism in Australia and the different generations of that. So, for example, Kenny came out here. He was sponsored out by his sister, so he's essentially a migrant who's been here a long time. Jono is half Vietnamese and half Australian, but he just sees himself as completely Australian. And Anna is an Iranian asylum seeker who is really new to the country and is seeking asylum. So they really represented for me the three layers of migration to Australia and immigration. People who come from different backgrounds, but they're all new to Australia in a sense.
Yeah, so we were quite interested in Kenny as a character. Was there any process that made you choose to make this character a person of Vietnamese origin?
Yeah, so Kenny is Vietnamese. I was really interested in, I think the debate about asylum seekers and refugees often gets framed as Anglo versus non-Anglo, and I just don't think it's like that anymore. It's Australia is so multicultural, and we have all these layers of migration that it's really complex, and people from all different cultures can have different generalisations about people who've arrived at a different point in time, and how it's really easy to draw lines about, they're different to us because of this or that. My own dad is Vietnamese, so I know the culture a bit better than others, and I just had a lot of fun writing Kenny. I really like his character, and that's why I wanted to make him Vietnamese.
So from a writer's point of view, you can tell that there's a lot of background research that's needed in order to write such a story. So could you talk to us about your research process and how this research stage feeds into your writing?
Yeah, you're right, I did absolutely heaps of research, and I talked to everybody who had talked to me, and that included teachers, high school students. I spent a few days in Darwin High School talking to refugee and English as a second background language students, and I talked to people who weren't supposed to talk to me, like security guards and people who work in detention, people who work for the government. So those people said, don't put my name anywhere near the story, but I'm happy to talk to you. And I spoke to people who had been in detention previously who are now out. And I also worked really closely with two consultants. So one is an Iranian writer and artist whose name is Shukufeh Kavani. I was really lucky to find her, and the other one is called Natasha Blucher, and she works in asylum seeker advocacy, so fighting for the rights of people in asylum. And both those consultants read both drafts of the story. So even once I'd done all of the research and had fed it all into the story, I met up with them a lot of times, and we'd talk through points, and then they read both drafts and gave notes, and we said you need to look at this, or this is not quite accurate, and change this. So it was a really big process.
Your main character, Anna, is a young girl who's clearly been through a lot of traumatic experiences, both in her country of origin and on her journey to Australia. And can you talk to us about the choices that you made around how to communicate this trauma?
Sure. Yeah, it was difficult to know how to convey Anna's trauma because she doesn't want to talk about it a lot in the story. She just wants to try to go to school and have a normal life, and rebuild that life. So I chose to communicate her history in flashbacks because she suffers from flashbacks from what she'd been through. And I also tried to convey current trauma in language. So I used verse in some of the novel to try to convey that emotional shutdown state when you can't really take in a whole lot that's going on, but you just take in the essentials. And so they're the two ways that I explored trauma.
Can you tell us about the cover of this book and what's the process of getting a cover design and how much input you have as an author?
Yeah, so the process of making a cover can be really variable. Sometimes you just get sent ideas from the publisher, but in this case I had a really strong idea for what I wanted, and I knew that I didn't want any barbed wire on the cover and that I did want something that was to do with connection. And one day I was out walking in the suburb where I live in Darwin, and I saw some birds up on the telephone wires and just took a quick snap on my phone and I sent it in to the publisher, and she forwarded it to the graphic designer. And they liked it as well because telephone is one of the ways that Anna and Jono communicate, because you're not allowed mobile phones in detention, so they have to speak on the landline. And it's also kind of a symbol of a connection but a distance. So and the birds are a repeated motif in the book as well, so that fit in really well. And then I sent them some more photos in order to try to get the colours right. So the early ones were just blue sky. I said, it's looking a bit happy, so maybe we can make it a bit more varied, a bit varying moods there. So I sent them some photos of beautiful Darwin sunsets, which are really bright blazing colours, and some photos of Darwin storms in the wet season, which just roll in and they're really breathtaking. So they kind of incorporated all of that into the cover, and I was just really happy with it. I thought it was a really beautiful cover. So.
And music was a central part of Anna and Jono's relationship, so we were wondering why you chose rap music to show that link.
Yeah, I chose rap music as the link between Anna and Jono because there's a really strong underground rap movement in Iran, and so that became a way of kind of articulating what Anna's been through in the past. That's a form of her rebellion in Iran, that she wants to be able to go out and go to these rap concerts, but she hasn't been allowed. And the rappers over there are really political. They rap about, the government and the rules that they don't like, and as a result, they can end up in jail. Or whereas the Australian rappers have so much freedom in comparison. They can say whatever they want. They can just swear at the whole song if they want to, and nobody's going to do anything about that. So I wanted that contrast. It's a link between them, but they're also coming from completely opposite backgrounds and completely opposite appreciation of that music.
In your novel, it shows the refugee experience in a way that's very relatable for young people, even if they haven't gone through that experience themselves. And was this a goal for you? And if so, did you want to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really a goal. I love books that transport me into another world where I haven't been before. And I think that's a goal overall for my writing. With the first book, it was transporting people to a remote Aboriginal community where many people wouldn't have gone. For this one, transporting people into a detention centre and seeing what life is really like there. I think that empathy is one of the key reasons to write and reasons to read, is that you get that empathetic experience about what is life like for somebody else. And that was very much the aim with this one.
So how important is the idea of hope for you in this book? Do you feel hopeful about the characters and what happens to them?
Yeah, I think hope is essential really to living, isn't it? If you want to carry on, then you need some kind of sense of hope. The difficulty with it in this book is that the more research that I did, the less likely it was for there to be a lot of hope in some of the characters' lives in the future. And so it was a matter of really saying, yes, there are bits of hope, but more than that, there's resilience and there's the ability to cope with difficult times and come through with a resilience and a determination to start again or to do things and to survive. So I think hope can be different things. You know, it can be hope for a bright future, it can be hope for survival, and yeah.